Imagine the person who literally saved your life when you were absolutely destitute. I mean, the person who fed you, gave you a place to sleep, and, eventually even took on the monumental task of raising your kids when you just couldn't do it.
Right. Someone who gave you everything.
Exactly. And now imagine you become wildly rich, incredibly famous, and you just completely erase them from your life. You act like they never even existed.
It's just unthinkable for most people.
It really is. And today, we are looking at a story that asks a pretty terrifying question, which is, what happens when that buried past finally walks up the driveway and knocks on your front door?
Oh, it is the ultimate reckoning. Because, we spend so much of our lives trying to curate our own narratives. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when we achieve some measure of success or comfort. We want to believe that the past is just a closed book. But human history, our personal history, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
The ledger always demands to be balanced eventually.
And that balancing of the ledger is exactly what we are exploring today on this Under the Hood Deep Dive. We are unpacking a really brilliant classic BBC radio mystery called Long Time No See, which was originally written by Joan Sadler.
Such a fantastic piece of writing.
It really is. And we're doing this by looking at the incredible sources provided by Chesterton Radio. For those of you who might not be familiar, they broadcast out of the little station on Commercial Street in Atchison, Kansas, and they have this really noble mission.
They do, yeah. It's a completely listener-supported endeavor.
Yeah.
And their entire goal is to preserve these timeless, character-driven audio dramas. Because, well, we live in a world right now that is just saturated with disposable content.
Oh, totally.
You scroll through a feed, you watch a 15-second video, you just forget it instantly. It's like a digital diet of empty calories.
Right, yeah.
But what Chesterton Radio does is they ask us to pause and consider what is actually worth remembering.
Mm-hmm.
They dig into these archives to find out why a radio play broadcast decades ago still speaks so profoundly to the modern heart.
Yeah, and they anchor this in the philosophical tradition of G.K. Chesterton himself, this idea that ordinary lives are the settings for our greatest, most profound dramas.
Exactly.
I just love that. Rescuing these audio treasures from the ether. And the source notes they provided for this specific broadcast contain a line that I think perfectly sets the agenda for our whole conversation today.
Oh, no, the one you mean?
Yeah, they write. The best mysteries are rarely about how the murder was committed. They are about why, and about the quiet human motives that hide beneath ordinary conversation.
That is the crucial distinction between a puzzle and a story, really. If a mystery is just about the muddy footprint, the specific poison, the exact timetable of the trains.
It's just an engineering problem, right?
Exactly. You solve it, you close the book, and you just never think about it again.
Mm-hmm.
But when a mystery focuses on the why, on the messy, contradictory, deeply buried psychological trauma of the characters, it becomes a mirror.
Wow.
So we aren't just going to be mapping out alibis today. We're going to be peeling back the very polite, very respectable veneers of these characters to reveal the grief, the grudges, and the dark secrets that led to a brutal murder.
Okay, let's unpack this. But before we get into the heavy psychology and the murder itself, I have to point out a really fun little discrepancy in the source material we were given.
Oh, right. This is great.
It's a bit of an Easter egg for the really eagle-eyed listeners out there, and it honestly made me laugh because it shows the reality of archival work.
You're talking about the victim's name.
Yes. If you read the description promoting this play, it clearly states that the victim is a successful novelist named Tony Grant.
Right.
But the moment you actually hit play and listen to the transcript, the murdered man is explicitly named Alan Bell. I just love that. It's like you, the listener, are already solving a meta-mystery before the play even starts.
It is a wonderful little quirk of media preservation. Sometimes over the decades, the promotional copy or the cataloging data, it just drifts away from the actual recorded audio.
Yeah, like a working title gets saved in a database or something.
Exactly, or a script revision just isn't updated in the press release. But whether the archival notes call him Tony Grant or the actors call him Alan Bell, and we'll stick with Alan Bell since that's who they interact with, the core inciting incident remains exactly the same.
Right.
And it is an absolute masterclass in setting up a localized pressure cooker of tension.
So let's look at that setup. Our victim, Alan Bell, is this wealthy, incredibly arrogant thriller writer. He collaborates on these successful books with his wife, Harriet.
Yes.
And as the play opens, they are supposed to be taking a trip. They are flying to Paris. But at the absolute last minute, Alan suddenly fakes a stomach bug.
He plays it up big time, too.
Oh, totally. Saying he's terribly ill, he can't possibly travel, and he insists that Harriet just go on to Paris without him. So she leaves for Gatwick Airport, and Alan stays behind in their very isolated country home, which is called Longfield House.
Right.
And to the surprise of no one who listens to mysteries, he is found stabbed to death shortly after.
Yeah, and immediately, Inspector Burgess, who is the lead investigator on the scene, is confronted with a physical puzzle that just doesn't quite make sense. It's not a chaotic scene of a burglary gone wrong.
No, not at all.
There are two very specific anomalies. First, the murder weapon is completely missing. The medical examiner confirms it was a stabbing, likely with a knife, but the blade is nowhere to be found.
Right, which is odd.
And second, and perhaps more tellingly, the family dog, a Labrador named Ben, has been very deliberately shut away in the kitchen.
Which is such a brilliant, subtle clue because, if a stranger breaks into a dark country house, the dog barks, or the dog attacks, or the intruder shoots the dog.
Exactly.
But shutting the dog in the kitchen, that implies control of the environment. It implies that whoever came to the door wasn't planning a stealthy break-in through a shattered window.
No, they walked right up to the front door and they were let in by the victim.
Yeah.
And this is where we really have to look at the geography of Longfield House. Because this isn't a flat in the middle of London where a drunk might stumble through the wrong door.
Or a random opportunist trying a handle.
Right. This is an isolated country estate in the English countryside. You have to navigate dark, winding country lanes just to find it. You have to go entirely out of your way to get there.
Yeah, you have to want to be there.
Precisely. Which means that whoever showed up at Alan Bell's door that Thursday night made a highly specific, deliberate choice. They had a reason to be there.
I think of it like a pressure cooker. The heat has been turned up, the lid is locked on tight, and there's only one valve. And Alan Bell actually engineered that pressure cooker himself.
He really did.
The fake stomach bug wasn't just him wanting a quiet night in to read a book. He was intentionally clearing the board. He wanted his wife out of the house. He was expecting someone, or at least creating the isolated conditions necessary to deal with a very private matter.
He was absolutely setting a stage. And what's fascinating here is that the title of the play itself gives us the biggest psychological clue to the nature of that private matter.
Oh, long time no see.
Right. Inspector Burgess learns from Harriet that Alan didn't just throw this phrase around casually to old friends. According to Harriet, Alan only used this specific phrase with a sort of false bonhomie, a fake cheerfulness, toward people he didn't actually like.
Yes. It was his defense mechanism. It's that thing people do when they are caught off guard by someone they detest or, feel threatened by, and they just overcompensate with forced casualness.
Oh, hey, long time no see.
Exactly. It's a verbal shield.
It is the absolute opposite of genuine warmth. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it tells Inspector Burgess something crucial about the very last moment of Alan Bell's life.
Right.
The doorbell rings. Alan opens the door. He looks out into the dark. And he sees someone he knows, someone he hasn't seen in a significant amount of time.
And his immediate reflexive reaction is not to welcome them in, but to deploy his verbal armor. Long time no see.
Exactly. The encounter was instantly fraught with tension. The air in that doorway was immediately hostile, which really begs the central question we want to explore today, right? Why do reunions with people from our past affect us so deeply?
Oh, that is such a profound question, because when you think about it, seeing someone from your past isn't just about seeing them. It's about confronting who you used to be.
Yes.
When Alan opens that door, he's not just seeing an old acquaintance. He's coming face to face with his own history.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier, he spent years carefully curating this respectable, wealthy author persona.
And a reunion threatens to shatter that completely, because memory and reality, they often differ so drastically. We romanticize the past to protect our current egos.
Oh, totally. We smooth over the rough edges.
Right. They tell ourselves we were the heroes of our own stories. But then someone from that era shows up, and they remember the unedited version of events. They remember your flaws, your failures, the times you were, less than heroic.
Yeah, and that is terrifying for someone like Alan. So the million-dollar question for the inspector is, who was standing on the other side of that door?
Well, to figure that out, we can't just cast a wide net looking for strangers. We have to look at the people who were already deeply embedded in the soil of Longfield House.
And I mean that literally, because we need to talk about the estate's gardener, Ernest Pollock.
Oh, Ernest, this is where the narrative really shifts from a standard puzzle box whodunit into a profound, tragic exploration of trauma.
Yeah.
and specifically the immigrant experience in post-war Britain. Ernest and his wife Dora live in the forester's cottage right there on the estate. And almost from the moment the police arrive, Ernest is framed by the narrative, and more importantly by the other characters, as the prime suspect.
Now, I have to push back here a little bit on behalf of Inspector Burgess, because I don't want to make the police sound completely incompetent or purely prejudiced.
Sure, fair enough.
On paper, if you look at the cold, hard facts of the police file, you can absolutely see why they zero in on Ernest. I mean, he has a documented history of severe violence on this exact property.
That's true.
We learn that 5 years prior, he attacked the former owner of the estate, a man named Clive Lambert, with a pruning knife. An attack that resulted in 14 stitches.
A very specific weapon, yeah.
Exactly. And what kind of weapon does the medical examiner suspect was used to kill Alan Bell? A pruning knife. Specifically, a pruning knife that just happens to be missing from Ernest's meticulously organized tool rack in his shed.
Right.
So if I'm the detective, I'm absolutely knocking on Ernest's door first.
And you would be right to do so from a purely procedural standpoint. That is exactly how an investigation works. It's the logical physical evidence. But this brings us right back to Chesterton Radio's emphasis on the why.
Yeah.
If you only look at the physical clues, the missing knife, the past violent outburst, Ernest looks incredibly guilty. But if you look at the psychological portrait of Ernest Pollack, you see a completely different heartbreaking reality.
It really is heartbreaking.
Ernest was born in Vienna. He is a Jewish man who lost his entire family at Auschwitz. He survived the Holocaust, only to arrive in Britain as a refugee at the end of the war, where he was subsequently placed in a British internment camp.
It is just unimaginable trauma. He has been systematically hunted, imprisoned, and dehumanized by the state. His wife, Dora, even explains to the police that he is a man who has been fundamentally shattered by authority.
Yes. Terrified of uniforms.
Terrified of interrogations. The mere thought of being locked in a dark cell again causes him to spiral into absolute panic.
And you really have to consider this through the lens of G.K. Chesterton's writings, specifically in a book like Orthodoxy, where he talks about the desperate need for sanctuary.
Well, that's a perfect connection.
Chesterton talks about needing a small, defined place of sanity in a mad world. Ernest's garden is his sanctuary. He just wants to tend to the soil. He knows the plants. He understands the changing of the seasons.
He has poured 28 years of his life into making that specific garden beautiful and orderly. The garden makes sense to him in a way the human world just does not.
And then, into the sanctuary walks Alan Bell.
Yeah.
The cocky, wealthy, loud thriller writer who just bought the place and acts like he owns everything, including the people on it.
Alan is the ultimate disruptor. He constantly needles Ernest. He picks at him. He interrogates Ernest about gardening, just soaking up his decades of hard-won, intimate knowledge of botany and horticulture.
And why does he do this? So that Alan can write a gardening book and slap his own famous marketable name on the cover?
Exactly.
It is a profound violation of Ernest's domain and his dignity. It's intellectual theft, and it's wrapped entirely in class privilege.
Right. Alan treats Ernest like a natural resource to be mined for profit, completely ignoring the fact that Ernest is a traumatized human being whose entire sense of self-worth is tied to that knowledge.
And because of this dynamic, and because of Ernest's deep-seated fear of authority, when the police actually start questioning him about the night of the murder, Ernest makes a fatal mistake. He panics, and he lies.
Oh, it's so frustrating to listen to, but you understand why he does it.
You absolutely do. He tells Inspector Burgess that he was at home in the cottage with his wife all evening. But the truth is much messier. In reality, Ernest had cycled over to the main house that night.
Right.
He was obsessing over that gardening book draft. He was desperate to find out if Alan was going to give him any credit at all or just steal his life's work, so he was at the house.
And more importantly, he was near the house when the real killer arrived. Ernest actually heard Alan open the door and say, "Long time no see."
Yes.
Wait, so he essentially had the key piece of auditory evidence that proved someone else was there. But he refuses to tell the police. And when you think about it from his perspective, it makes total tragic sense. He knows exactly how the game is played. He is a German-speaking immigrant with a temper and a police record for violence. He looks around and realizes that all the respectable English characters are subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, pointing their fingers directly at him.
right? He realizes he's the absolute perfect scapegoat.
Exactly.
And the tragedy of Ernest Pollack is just absolute. The pressure of the investigation mounts. The police keep hounding him, interpreting his severe trauma responses, his shaking, his defensiveness as clear evidence of guilt.
Yeah.
And finally, Ernest just breaks. He cannot face the prospect of a cell again. He cannot endure the interrogations. So he goes down to the river in the nearby town of Boston, and he drowns himself.
It is so devastating. I mean, there is a moment in the source transcript that just gutted me. It's when his wife, Dora, is recounting his last moments to the police.
Oh, that scene is so hard.
She says he told her he was just going out to work in the garden to calm his nerves. And as he walked out the door, she cheerfully called out, "Goodbye, little Dora, I'll be the same." It's such a mundane, affectionate, everyday phrase. But he knew. He knew he was walking out that door to end his life.
It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question about how society treats the outsider, doesn't it? Ernest wasn't a murderer. He didn't kill Alan Bell. He was a victim of his own profound, untreated historical trauma, yes.
Right.
But he was equally the victim of a society that was incredibly eager to point the finger at the foreigner, with the funny accent and a history of getting upset. The polite, respectable people in this play essentially drive an innocent man to his suicide simply to protect their own comfort.
Which perfectly bridges us to the next massive layer of this mystery. Because if Ernest is the tragic, obvious scapegoat on the estate, we need to look at who else was in the orbit of Longfield House.
Yes.
And to truly understand why Alan Bell was murdered, we actually have to leave the isolated, wealthy country estate and travel 8 miles down the road. We have to go to the very ordinary working-class town of Boston.
And look at a man named Don Stoner.
Exactly. Let's look at Don Stoner.
Don is a fascinating character study. He is the manager of a local carpet store. He seems like the most unremarkable, everyday guy you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
He wears ordinary suits, works regular hours, deals with linoleum and shag pile. But during their sweep of Alan's office, the police find a very brief, incredibly cryptic letter from Alan Bell sitting on his desk.
Oh, I love this clue.
It's a note addressed to Don that just says, "Nothing doing." So naturally, Inspector Burgess goes to the carpet store to question Don. And Don flat out denies knowing Alan Bell.
Yeah, he just looks the inspector in the eye and says, "Never met the man, why would I?"
Right.
But the police dig just a little bit into the public records, and they uncover this massive, deeply tangled web of personal history that ties these two men together in the most intimate ways possible.
That's a huge revelation.
It turns out Don Stoner and Alan Bell didn't just know each other. They were childhood best friends. They grew up in the same neighborhood, went to primary school together, shared their formative years. But their paths diverged in wildly different directions.
And the depths of this relationship speak to another very Chestertonian idea, this time from a book like The Everlasting Man.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, it's the idea that our pasts are enduring, and that the debts we accrue in our youth shape the architecture of our adult souls. Let's look at the history here. When Alan Bell was a young, struggling, unpublished writer, when he was utterly destitute and hungry in London, it was Don Stoner who saved him.
Yeah.
Don took Alan in. He let him share his cramped room. He essentially kept Alan off the streets and kept him fed while he tried to write.
And it goes so much deeper than just letting a buddy crash on the couch, right? Because as the years go on, Don eventually marries Alan's ex-wife, Elaine.
Yes.
And Don takes on the immense responsibility of raising Alan's 2 young sons. Don provides the stable, loving, completely ordinary family life that Alan completely walked away from in his pursuit of fame.
And how does Alan repay this monumental, life-saving generosity? He becomes a wildly successful, incredibly wealthy, famous author, and he completely severs ties.
It's awful.
He abandons them. He cuts Don, Elaine, and his own biological sons entirely out of his life. He doesn't send money. He doesn't visit on holidays. He just erases them from his narrative.
He reinvents himself as this solitary genius, completely independent of the people who held him up when he was weak.
Exactly. So when Inspector Burgess uncovers this history, you really have to stop and ask, why do we resent the people we owe the most to?
That is such a complex question. It seems so counterintuitive. Don saved Alan's life. Don raised his kids. And yet when Don presumably reaches out for some kind of help or acknowledgement, Alan's response is just a cold, dismissive 2-word note. Nothing doing.
It's incredibly cruel.
It really is.
But it's a phenomenal psychological insight.
Yeah.
And it's something Chesterton explored brilliantly in The Defendant, where he defended the quiet, ordinary domestic life against the loud, flashy, ambitious life.
Oh, that makes perfect sense here.
Right. Don Stoner is the absolute hero of the domestic life. He works at the carpet store. He probably goes to football practice. He puts food on the table. He raises another man's children without complaint.
While Alan is the flashy, ambitious success.
Yes, but Alan's success is built entirely on a foundation of moral debt. And people with deep, unpaid moral debts often grow to despise the people they owe.
Wow, yeah. Because the very existence of the Savior, the fact that Don is out there knowing the truth, is a constant, humiliating reminder of the debtor's past weakness.
Exactly. Alan hates Don because Don remembers when Alan was hungry, pathetic, and needed help. Don shatters the myth that Alan is a self-made man.
Right. And what's worse, Don knows Alan's darkest, most carefully hidden secret. Because when the police do a deep background check on our wealthy victim, they drop an absolute bombshell that changes the entire complexion of the case.
It flips everything upside down.
It does. Alan Bell, the famous author, was a convicted killer.
This completely flips the script on who the victim actually was. Alan Bell presented himself to the world and to his wealthy neighbors as this high-minded, aggressive pacifist.
Yeah, always lecturing people.
He loved to argue against the military. He openly sneered at violence. He positioned himself as morally superior to anyone who had served in the armed forces.
Yep.
But the police record shows that back in 1967, Alan got into a vicious brawl in a pub.
And what was it over? A 25-pound gambling debt.
Unbelievable.
He fought a hotel doorman named Ronald Wyman. He knocked Wyman down, and Wyman died from massive head injuries. Alan was charged with manslaughter, but because of a slick lawyer, he only got a suspended sentence and walked away.
A 25-pound gambling debt. This wealthy, arrogant writer who sits in his country house, sneering at the local war veterans, literally beat a working-class man to death over pocket change.
Suddenly, that aggressive pacifism makes complete sense, right? I mean, I always wondered why he was so loud about it. It wasn't a deeply held moral philosophy. It was a psychological mask.
Right, he was overcompensating.
He hated violence because he knew exactly what he was capable of. So the police look at Don Stoner, who was sheltering Alan around that time in London, and they think, okay, here is the ultimate motive.
It makes sense.
Did Don finally reach his breaking point? Did he drive to Longfield House that Thursday night to demand his fair share, to say, I raised your kids, you owe me? And when Alan looked at him and said, nothing doing, did Don snap and use that missing pruning knife?
It is a highly compelling, deeply emotional theory. And the circumstantial evidence points right at him. Don's car was even seen parked in a lay-by, a small roadside rest area near Longfield House on the exact night of the murder.
So he was physically there?
He was. And he admits he walked up to the house. But Don swears to Inspector Burgess that by the time he looked through the glass of the French windows, Alan Bell was already lying dead on the floor.
And as it turns out, against all dramatic expectations, Don is actually telling the truth about not killing Alan.
Yes, he is.
His presence near the house that night isn't the key to the murder. It's the key that unlocks an entirely different, massive criminal conspiracy that was hiding in plain sight the entire time.
Just such a great twist.
Because while Don was parked in that dark lay-by, trying to work up the courage to go face the former best friend who betrayed him, he saw something else. He saw something that didn't belong on a quiet country lane at night.
He saw a massive, heavy-duty Spanish freight lorry. A truck bearing the logo, Transportes Gonzales. And more importantly, he saw as a very distinguished older gentleman with a neat white beard getting out of a private car to meet that foreign lorry in the dead of night.
And this blows the case wide open, bringing us to the most surprising layer of this deep dive. The respectable villains.
Oh, they are the worst kind of villains.
Let's look closely at Alan's upper crust neighbors. We have Naval Commander Henry Morgan, his very proper wife Hilda, and Harriet's so-called uncle, Colonel Charles Ferguson.
These characters represent the absolute pinnacle of English village respectability. They are the bedrock of local society. They are retired military men.
Right.
They live on comfortable pensions. They maintain lovely, immaculate homes. They host elegant dinner parties. They drink fine cognacs by the fire. And they constantly loudly sneer at Alan Bell's phony pacifist ideas.
They project this impenetrable aura of absolute patriotic integrity and conservative values. But the truth, wait, I have to jump in here because this is the best part of the whole story.
Go for it.
These so-called respectable patriots, they are running a massive, highly illegal international smuggling ring.
It is a staggering, breathtaking level of hypocrisy. These are the men who look down their noses at Ernest the immigrant and treat him like dirt.
Yeah.
These are the men who look at Don the carpet salesman as beneath their station. These men who constantly wave the flag of their glorious military service are actually using that exact military logistical network and their contacts across borders to smuggle uncut diamonds into the country and small arms out of it.
Wow.
And they're using those Spanish freight lorries, Transportes Gonzales, to move the illicit goods right under the noses of the local police.
And here is the irony that is just so delicious. Alan Bell, the victim, actually had a hunch about this.
He did, yeah.
Harriet tells the police that Alan had an overactive imagination because he spent his life plotting out thriller novels. He literally joked to the Morgans at a dinner party that he was writing a new book about a massive drug and diamond smuggling ring run by a retired naval officer.
Just poking the bear.
And he jokingly told them he was going to dedicate the book to Commander Morgan.
It's the classic hubris of the artist, isn't it? He thought he was just being provocative. He thought he was just testing a fictional plot out on his stuffy neighbors to get a rise out of them.
Right.
But he was actually poking a very real, incredibly dangerous bear.
Yeah.
Alan's intuition as a writer, his ability to look at ordinary people and imagine their hidden motives was spot on, and then he accidentally confirmed his own fictional plot.
Yeah, he couldn't sleep one morning, went for a walk at the crack of dawn, and actually spotted Commander Morgan meeting with one of those Spanish lorries.
He saw it with his own eyes and remembered Don Stoner, the carpet guy from the working class town.
Oh, yes.
There's this brilliant, subtle, almost throwaway detail in the source material that ties everything together perfectly. Don tells the police that he actually knows Commander Morgan's house very well because he was hired to lay a carpet there the previous year.
Right. And where did he lay the carpet? In the attic. And what did he see while he was working in the attic? A massive, highly sophisticated, tripod-mounted telescope pointing out the window.
Which is such a specific detail.
Mm.
Now, Commander Morgan claims the telescope is simply for bird watching.
Oh, sure, bird watching.
Right, just an eccentric hobby for a retired gentleman. But think about the geography we established earlier. They are in an isolated rural area near the coast. That high-powered telescope isn't for looking at local finches. It is a military-grade observation post. They are spying on the surrounding roads, watching the coastlines for the police or the Coast Guard, actively protecting their criminal enterprise. They have literally turned their respectable, ivy-covered country home into a smuggler's watchtower.
It is so sinister precisely because it is so banal. It's just a telescope in an attic. It reminds me a bit of Chesterton's Tremendous Trifles, how the most ordinary things can actually hold the most incredible significance if you just look at them the right way.
Exactly. It's finding the extraordinary within the ordinary.
And I want to pause here and really look at the mechanics of how Colonel Ferguson operates, because his behavior throughout the police investigation is chilling. I want to contrast how he handles the pressure with how Ernest Pollack handles it.
This is a vital comparison if we want to understand how power works in this society. When Ernest, the traumatized outsider, is suspected, he falls apart. He is crushed by the weight of his trauma, his lack of social standing, and his inability to articulate his innocence in a way the authorities respect. But Colonel Ferguson, he actively weaponizes his respectability.
He uses it like a sword.
He does. When Inspector Burgess comes to question him, Ferguson doesn't sweat. He leans back, he calmly smokes a cigarette, he offers the inspector a drink, and he cheerfully points the finger straight at Ernest.
Yeah, he tells the police that Ernest is paranoid, vicious, a dangerous foreigner, a man who, in his words, belongs to the people who started 2 world wars.
It's like optical camouflage. Ferguson knows exactly what the police have a built-in filter for. He knows they have a blind spot that makes wealthy, well-spoken military men invisible to suspicion and working-class immigrants hyper-visible to suspicion.
He uses outright xenophobia and class prejudice as a shield.
Completely.
He feeds the police exactly what they are predisposed to believe. He relies entirely on his status as an English gentleman and a war hero to deflect the investigation away from the smuggling ring and onto the innocent gardener.
And it proves a very dark fundamental truth that Chesterton often explored in his writings, especially Heretics or his Father Brown mysteries.
Oh, yes, Father Brown.
Right. The idea that the most dangerous people in the world do not look like monsters. They don't look like scarred, raving lunatics hiding in alleys.
No, the most dangerous, destructive people are often the ones who are the most polite.
Exactly. They are the ones wearing the bespoke suits, the ones who pour you a very good glass of Amontillado, the ones who chat about the weather while they meticulously plan how to destroy you.
Yeah.
They hide behind the veneer of respectability because it is the strongest, most impenetrable armor that society provides.
Which brings us to the explosive, incredibly satisfying climax of the story. Because Colonel Ferguson wasn't just trying to silence a nosy neighbor who might have stumbled onto a smuggling ring.
No, it goes way deeper than that.
The motive for the murder is so much more personal, so much more deeply rooted, and it ties all the way back to the ghost of 1967.
Everything comes full circle. Inspector Burgess, refusing to be blinded by the camouflage respectability, starts looking closely at that old manslaughter charge against Alan Bell.
Right.
He digs into the file of the man Alan killed in that pub brawl, over 25 pounds, Ronald Wyman. And he discovers that Ronald Wyman wasn't just a random civilian. He was an ex-regular soldier. He served for years in the 57th Field Artillery.
And when police casually, almost conversationally, ask Colonel Ferguson what regiment he served in during his illustrious military career, he proudly, arrogantly announces the 57th Field Artillery.
The connection is made.
Yeah.
Ronald Wyman wasn't just a soldier in the same regiment. He was Colonel Ferguson's personal driver.
Oh.
He was his loyal, trusted subordinate for years.
The past reaches right out and grabs them all by the throat. Colonel Ferguson had just discovered, mere weeks before the murder, that his obnoxious, arrogant, pacifist neighbor, the man who sneered at the military and acted morally superior, was the exact same man who had brutally beaten his loyal former driver to death in a senseless brawl all those years ago.
It is a stunning, almost Shakespearean convergence of motives. Ferguson absolutely wants to protect the extremely lucrative smuggling operation. Yes, the money is important, but it's more than that.
It's revenge.
It is deeply personal revenge. It's a warped, vigilante sense of military justice. He sees Alan Bell as a wealthy parasite who destroyed a good, loyal working man and got away with nothing but a slap on the wrist because he could afford a good lawyer.
So we can finally reconstruct the exact events of the night of the murder. We know how it happened. Ferguson didn't use his own car because he knew Don Stoner or someone else might recognize it.
Right. He borrowed a white Mini from a friend, a Major Henderson, to avoid being spotted.
Yeah. He drove to Longfield House. He knew Alan was alone because Alan, thinking he was clever, had phoned Harriet from the house to say he was staying home with a stomach bug, and the village gossip mill had passed that information along.
A fatal mistake.
Right. So Ferguson parks the car. He walks to the shed. He takes the pruning knife from Ernest's tool rack, deliberately, maliciously setting up the poor gardener to take the fall, and he walks up to the front door and rings the bell.
And Alan Bell, expecting perhaps a delivery or a friend, opens the door, and he looks out into the dark night, and he sees the respectable, stern face of Colonel Ferguson standing there.
Yeah.
And Alan knows. In that instant, looking into the Colonel's eyes, he knows his past has caught up with him. He knows why Ferguson is there, and he utters those fatal words.
Long time no see.
The false bonhomie, the ultimate tragic failure of his lifelong defense mechanism. A shield made of paper against a man holding a knife.
And the climax of this play is just incredible radio. It's a masterclass in tension. Inspector Burgess pieces this all together just as the Spanish freighter Transportes Gonzales is preparing to leave the docks in Boston.
The timing is incredible.
Ferguson realizes the net is closing. His respectability has failed him. He races to the harbor in a desperate attempt to escape on the smuggler's ship.
And this is where the medium of audio drama truly shines. We get this frantic, deeply atmospheric chase sequence, entirely constructed through Foley sound effects and voice acting.
It's so visceral.
It really is. The sounds of the dark harbor, the crashing of the waves, the shouting of the police, the sheer panic in the breathing. Ferguson is no longer the cool, collected aristocrat sipping cognac. He is stripped of all his armor.
Yeah, he is a terrified, cornered animal. He runs blindly into the night, slipping on the wet docks, trying to reach the gangway of the ship.
And in the darkness, the chaos, and the panic, he slips.
The respectable Colonel Ferguson, the man who used his high-class status and his war record to literally drive an innocent, traumatized Holocaust survivor to suicide, runs blindly into the water and is pulled into the massive, churning screws of the ship's engine.
It is a brutal, visceral, horrifying end.
It is poetic justice, but it is a very dark, very unforgiving poetry. Alan Bell's past finally caught up with him. He could not outrun the ghost of Ronald Wyman, no matter how much money he made or how many books he sold.
Right. But in dying, Alan Bell also acted as the catalyst that brought down this vast network of hypocrisy, greed, and aristocratic cruelty. The smuggling ring is completely exposed.
The arrogance of the Morgans and Ferguson is shattered forever. The facade of the English country village is torn down.
It's like a house of cards collapsing all at once.
It really is. And as we move toward the end of our exploration today, I really want to reflect on why this specific format, audio drama, radio theater, is so uniquely suited for a story exactly like this one. Why does this hit harder than if we were just watching it on television?
Because it forces a completely different, much more active kind of engagement from the audience. When you watch a movie or a television show, you rely heavily on the visual cues.
Yeah, absolutely.
You rely on the actor's facial expressions, the lighting, the director literally pointing a camera to show you exactly where to look and who to suspect. It's a passive experience.
But in a radio play like Longtime Noter, see, you have nothing but the human voice and the ambient sound. You have to build the world in the theater of your own mind.
You literally become Inspector Burgess. You don't get to see if someone is sweating. You are forced to listen so incredibly closely to the hesitations, the pauses, the slight changes in tone.
Right. When Don Stoner insists he doesn't know Alan Bell, you have to hear the lie in the slight tremble of his voice.
Exactly. And when Colonel Ferguson blames Ernest Pollock, you don't see a sneer on his face. You have to hear the cruel, aristocratic sneer in the way he clips his consonants. You are actively listening for the hidden motives in the silences between the words.
Which brings us right back to the core philosophy of Chesterton Radio and why they broadcast from that little station on Commercial Street. To preserve what is worth remembering and to discover why it still matters today.
Because this play isn't just a puzzle about a missing pruning knife and a stomach bug. It is a profound, timeless exploration of how the past never, ever truly stays buried.
It asks us to look at the debts we owe, the people we have hurt, and the facades we build to convince ourselves we are good people.
It always comes back.
Always. Whether it is unhealed, unaddressed historical trauma like Ernest Pollock's, which ultimately destroys him because the polite world flatly refuses to understand it or accommodate it.
Or unpaid moral debts, like Alan Bell's deeply cruel betrayal of Don Stoner. You can move to a fancy country house. You can change your name, you can adopt a famous pseudonym, and reinvent yourself as a pacifist intellectual, but your history is always in the room with you.
It is the invisible guest at every dinner party.
It really is. You know, it reminds me of how ordinary lives are often the setting for our greatest dramas. You see this in plays like Our Town, or even radio series like One Man's Family.
Oh, definitely.
The grand sweeping tragedies don't always happen on battlefields. They happen in kitchens, in living rooms, over garden fences. And that's what makes them so enduring. Every old radio broadcast is itself a reunion, a chance to hear familiar voices and rediscover forgotten truths.
Wow. Your history is always in the room with you. That is a thought that is going to stick with me for a very long time. And it leads me to a final, slightly provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over long after this discussion ends.
Let's hear it.
We just spent an hour dissecting the hidden, incredibly complex lives of these fictional characters. We saw how a seemingly ordinary gardener was carrying the immense weight of the Holocaust, how a mundane carpet salesman was harboring a decades-old, life-altering betrayal, and how a polite, retired military colonel was running guns and diamonds while sipping tea.
The extraordinary, hiding quietly inside the utterly ordinary.
Exactly. So how often do we interact with our own neighbors, our coworkers, the people we casually pass in the aisles at the grocery store, completely oblivious to the intricate, sometimes dark, always profound histories that drive their every single decision?
It's a wild thought.
Next time you're having a casual, polite conversation over the garden fence with the person next door, ask yourself what quiet human motives, what old, unlaid ghosts are hiding just beneath their polite smile?
It is a humbling reminder that every human life is a dense, complicated novel, and we usually only ever take the time to read the back cover.
Such a beautiful way to put it. We only read the back cover. And with that, we want to warmly invite you to return to the little station on Commercial Street and to dive into the incredible archives of Chesterton Radio for yourself.
The open door is always on.
And we will be right here waiting to unpack the next great story with you.